Do you think about
Good morning, everyone. It's Craig Studnicky from RelatedISG and ISG. I'm here today to give you the Q4 update from 2020 as promised. We're early in 2021. The results from the last half of 2020 are amazing, remarkable, and I think it is a tea leaf of what we can expect through most of the year of 2021. 2020 was indeed remarkable in so many ways. So let me begin. I'm going to start with a headline that greeted us right after the first of the year, and it deals with mortgage rates. I'll show you the graph very quickly. Mortgage rates dipped from 2.67 to 2.65 during the first week of January. It's not a very significant decline, I understand, but nevertheless a decline. And every mortgage expert in the United States is maintaining their opinion that mortgage rates are going to stay below 3% through all of 2021. Now, this is a rather key component of all of our forecasting for 2021, particularly when you look at the amount of domestic demand for houses and condominiums in South Florida. Most Americans buy with mortgages. It's part of our culture. Low mortgage rates is fueling demand in a very big way, and we expect that to continue throughout 2021. As usual, we always talk about supply, and then we get to demand. So let's start with supply, and I'm going to start with the developer inventory. This is the amount of inventory that we built in this past cycle, which once again began in 2020. In 2012, close to 20,000 condos were developed between Coconut Grove to the south, Fort Lauderdale to the north, and all of this is really east of Interstate 95 to the beaches. That's the area that we focus on. Right now, there are 1,324 remaining units out of this 19,400 for sale, of which 700 is standing inventory. 700 from Coconut Grove up to Fort Lauderdale. When you slice and dice it neighborhood by neighborhood, it's not much inventory at all. What's really interesting, though, is 624, the difference between the 700 and 1324. That's what's under construction from Coconut Grove to Fort Lauderdale. Let me put that in perspective. In the last cycle, the last decade, close to 20,000 condominiums were developed here in South Florida. In the previous decade, in the 2000s, we developed 35,000 condos, and that's arguably too many. But we have 624 going into 2021. That's nothing. I think you'll see at the end of this presentation, it's time for the big developers in South Florida to consider starting the next cycle. Anyway, this is macro. This is what it looks like down on Brickell Avenue. As you know, ISG is handling the sales for Swire Properties at Brickell City Center. In addition to which, we are happy to announce that ISG sold the last remaining unit at Echo Brickell during the fourth quarter of last year. It closed in December. Echo Brickell is now officially 100% sold out. Let's take a look at Brickell. 5,600 units were developed out of the 20,000 just in Brickell, of which 169 remain. 109 at Brickell City Center, 15 at Brickell Flatiron. That would be standing inventory. And 45 at Una. Una is under construction. It's on the bay. Spectacular building near the Rickenbacker Causeway. They just postponed their delivery to 2025, which basically means this being January 2021. If you have a client related ISG that wants to buy a condominium in Brickell, something brand new, never lived in before, you have two choices now, Brickell City Center and Brickell Flatiron. Would it be possible that your clients would want Brickell? Yeah, here's why. We've said this to you before, but the numbers just keep proving out. In 2020, when we looked at all of the MLS condo resales in all of these different submarkets, Brickell all the way up to Fort Lauderdale, 1 out of every 3 happened in the Brickell neighborhood. Yes, that means that your clients, 1 out of 3 of them, are going to be asking you to show them a condominium property in Brickell. So whether you do it proactively or you do it as a reaction to a request, that's where 33% of your clients are going to take you. Brickell is clearly the most popular condominium market in all of Miami. Supply. This is what concerns me, and this is what I hope the big developers are going to pay attention to. In 2020, in the Brickell neighborhood, Una broke ground literally a year ago, last January. Nothing much happened in 2020. After January, we all know why. But this is the projection, as far as we can take it out, of future groundbreakings in Brickell. There's nothing planned, to make a long story short. I'm sure that by 2023 and 2024, these numbers will change. But as of right now, there is no supply in the pipeline besides Una, which is going to be delivered in 2025. Macroly, from Coconut Grove up through Fort Lauderdale, this is what it looks like. Last year, Una and Mr. C, a small condominium property in Coconut Grove, being developed by Terra Group, broke ground. Nothing planned for 2021 in all of these markets, from Coconut Grove all the way up through Fort Lauderdale. Zero. Nothing, as best we can tell, in 2022. Once again, I'm sure these numbers will change because I'm sure developers are going to start to consider starting the next cycle. But as of right now, this is what we call supply shock. There is nothing in the pipeline. MLS, let's go to single family homes, because that was indeed a unique story. You know, if we had a crystal ball a year ago last January, and we knew what was coming, we would have bought all the single family houses we could have gotten our hands on. Because we know that people were coming here from New York, from New Jersey, from Massachusetts. We know millennials were buying their first homes because of the low mortgage rates. We know that South Americans were coming up here, and so many of the Northeasterners and those from South America were practicing social distancing. It was easy to do in a house. The numbers are panning out. This 12-year low, by perspective, I think is fascinating. 15 years ago, in December of 2005, there were close to 14,000 single-family homes for sale in multiple listings: Dade County, Broward County, Palm Beach County. 10 years ago, in December of 2010, 15,500. In December of 15, almost 21,000 houses for sale. In December of 2020, it dropped to 94, 95. This is a 12-year low, because the last time we hit those kind of low numbers was early 2008. I will tell you all that based on the current absorption, the current sales pace in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, you can expect that number to probably fall below 9,000 by the end of Q1 of this year. Single-family homes are already tight. You know that. It's hard to get listings now because people don't want to leave their houses. Prices are going up like crazy with single-family homes. We all know that they're selling at list plus, fueled once again by that northeastern migration to South Florida, fueled by super low interest rates, fueled by that mindfulness that social distancing matters. And add to that, developers are not keeping up with the development of new supply. They just haven't been. And I suspect that when it comes to single family homes, inventory is going to get even tighter. Prices are going to get even higher than they are now. Let's walk you through briefly what happened last year. This little line represents the amount of sales. If you're above the line, you did more sales in 2020 than you did in the previous year, 2019. If you're below the line, you did less. So what that means, make a long story short, is in Q1, we did almost 9% more single-family home sales, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, than we did in the previous year. And look what happened in Q2. Disaster, quarantine, pandemic. We didn't know what to make of this horrible virus. In Q3, single-family homes started to climb out as people started seeking houses, mostly because of social distancing, and once again, fueled by low mortgage rates. And look what happened in Q4. In Q4, it simply took off. Single-family home demand just continued to climb. Add to that not just the northeastern migration, not just the millennials buying their first home, because mom and dad told them to take advantage of these low mortgage rates. You may never see this again. And maybe it's time that you start planning the rest of your life. But we also had South America reopen, whether it was Mexico, Colombia, Argentina. They came to South Florida, not just looking at condos, but also single-family homes. And that, in part, fueled that. All of that added to an interesting reaction from condos. When the pandemic began, particularly in the second quarter, many condominium associations, as you all know, wouldn't even allow you to enter the building to show a condo. And let's face it, you didn't have a lot of clients that wanted to go into buildings to look at condos anyway. Let me show you how all that panned out. But before we do, look at all of these numbers. I know it seems like a lot of numbers, but let me put it in perspective for you. The standard rule of thumb that I've walked you through many times is that when a given condominium building or even a single family home community has 10% or less of their total inventory in MLS, that's a seller's market. That's a That's a 40-year career talking to you. If it's 10% or more, that's a buyer's market. Well, without question, single-family homes right now are definitely a seller's market. But condos, if we had a crystal ball a year ago, we would have purchased all of the houses we could have gotten our hands on, knowing how 2020 was going to unfold. You want a crystal ball for 2021? I think the opportunity is condominiums, because right now they still represent a buyer's market. A year ago, close to 18% of all the condos that were built in the last cycle were in MLS, absolutely a buyer's market. That's now dropped to 15. But when you look at some of the submarkets, like Fort Lauderdale, that's already dropped below 10. It's already in a seller's market. Coconut Grove and Key Biscayne, they're right on the verge of tipping into a seller's market. And at the current pace of sales, Brickell Avenue, which is now at a little more than 12%, that will probably fall to 10% by summer. The demand for condos in Brickell is big. The amount of supply is tight. There's not much developer inventory. My point is, as 2021 unfolds, condos will also slip into the seller's market, but the buying opportunity in January, condominiums. Developers are closing out. There's still a lot of competition in MLS. And more than that, buyers are asking to go to buildings. It's as if we've grown comfortable living with Corona as best we can. They're not as afraid of going into buildings anymore. Condominium associations are letting you in, and we can see it in the numbers. Here's Brickell. Here's a quick snapshot of all the condos that were built in the last cycle. This is just to give you a quick example of how inventory is dropping. In December of 18, there were 903 brand new condos in MLS. A year later, 791. They dropped by 100. Today, it dropped by another 100. You're at right around 709. And I am telling you that based on the current pace of sales, by this coming summer, that's going to be close to 600. You're at 10%. Brickell slips into a seller's market. I think I've told you before, in MLS, in general real estate, in South Florida in particular, every 2 real estate transactions, here's how it works. One's a house and one's a condo. But in the first half of Q2, we saw single-family homes leading the parade. We've discussed why. I know you understand why. Social distancing, houses were the preferred product. But look at the rebound that condos made in the second half of 2020. We're getting very close to that 1-for-1, 50-50 ratio that I talked about. And I suspect that in 2021, it will normalize to 2021, in part because of the tight supply of houses, and secondly, the renewed popularity of condos. Let me show you what I mean. Here's what happened in 2020. In the first quarter of last year, we did a little bit better than 2019. We sold 3% more condominiums in Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. Q2 was a disaster, almost 50% less. We all know why. Q3, we started to make a little bit of a comeback. Still not as strong as 19, but we made a little bit of a comeback. Look at the final results of Q4. Up 37% more than the previous year. Your buyers are asking for condos. You, as real estate professionals, know that's where the great buying opportunities still are. You're taking them there, and sales are being done. And if this momentum continues, I'll say it again, condos by summer could easily slip into a seller's market. The opportunity for all of us right now is to take your clients to condos. That's where the great buys are. And I think it'll stay that way for another 6, maybe 9 months, fueled again by very, very low interest rates. This I didn't think would happen by the end of Q3. I thought we would be in the 90s, but here's what happened. We wound up writing 100.72% more real estate transactions in 2020 than we did in 2019. Congratulations to all of you, not just at RelatedISG, but all the realtors in South Florida, from Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. You sold more real estate last year than you did in 19. And when you consider just how awful the Q2 was to all of us, that's pretty remarkable. It also kind of reveals the silver lining of South Florida. The silver lining of this horrible dark cloud of the coronavirus is South Florida became more popular than ever. Now we're going to get into demand. Demand, as we know, comes in South Florida really in 2 flavors. One is domestic demand and the other is Latin American demand, and we're going to talk about both. The Trump administration in the year 2017 passed tax reform. And tax reform, to make a long story short, made certain states in this country very expensive to live in. Example would be New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Illinois, even and especially maybe California. It reversed a lot of people's thinking about living in those states. And there was a migration that began, particularly from the Northeast to Florida, beginning in 18 as a result of that tax reform act. It built a little momentum in 19. And because of the coronavirus acting as an accelerator in 2020, lots of folks moved here last year. The U.S. Census is not going to come out with their 2020 numbers until the end of this month, January. It's going to be remarkable to see, because I suspect that the South Florida and Florida numbers surpassed 2019. This is what I mean by the effect of the Tax Reform Act from the Trump administration in 2019. These red states, it's not a political statement, these states lost population beginning in 2018. Those numbers increased, those negative numbers increased in 2019. Once again, I don't know what it's going to look like in 2020, but their number one state of choice is Florida in every single case. And that's, in fact, what added to so much of the demand, fueled once again by these super low mortgage rates. The effect of this has been fascinating. I've owned ISG for close to 30 years, RelatedISG now for close to 10. I've lived here for 30, from New Jersey. And I never thought I would see this, because South Florida is very much a Latin American dominated market from a residential perspective. But things have shifted. The only thing that's constant in life, I guess, is change. 10 years ago, 50% of the demand of all condos, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County, came from Latin America. Majority, obviously Miami-Dade was even a little bit more. But when you lump all three counties together, that's how the numbers worked out. 21% being domestic demand, whether it came from Florida or Northeast U.S. That was the sum total 10 years ago. Last year, it completely reversed itself. The U.S. more than doubled. The United States domestic demand accounted for 50% of all condo sales, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. 50%. Latin America dropped to 23%. Expect that number to increase this year. Why? The Latin American number. Why? Number one, the dollar is declining. Chairman Powell printed all that money back in the second quarter of 2020 to keep the United States from slipping into a recession. He also said this may have a declining impact on the value of the U.S. dollar, and in fact, it's happening. It's happening. I looked at the exchange rates this morning for the Mexican peso, the Colombian peso, the Brazilian real, just as an example. And they're all back to kind of where they were last January. They rose significantly, or I should say the U.S. dollar rose significantly in Q2, but they're right back to where they were a year ago. And they're continuing to gain strength against the dollar. And as those currencies gain strength, those buyers have more buying power. They're coming to South Florida, particularly the Miami market. That, combined with the fact that there are a lot of serious shifting politics going on in South America, particularly now in Colombia, to the left. And people are getting nervous about their futures in those respective countries, making South Florida, once again, very attractive. So all of that to say, expect this number from Latin America in 2021 to increase. Expect domestic demand to maintain. I really do strongly believe that all of 21 will very much match what we saw in Q3 and Q4 of last year in terms of domestic demand. They're going to keep coming from the Northeast, fueled by super low mortgage rates. The coronavirus is going to stay with us for a little bit longer, and that's going to continue to act as a bit of an accelerator. So here are your key takeaways from the Q4 update. We have declining developer inventory for sure. This and MLS inventory, when it comes to houses, is at an all-time low probably. And when it comes to condos, still a buyer's market, shifting to a seller's market probably by this coming summer. We talked about low mortgage rates. Every mortgage expert in the United States predicts that these interest rates will remain low throughout this entire year, below 3%. Population growth, it's going to maintain domestically. Expect an increase this year from all of Latin America. And supply. There is no supply in the pipeline. So this is kind of a shout out to the biggest developers in all of South Florida. Perhaps 2021 is the year we begin the next cycle. We need to build with the kind of condominiums and the kind of single family homes that are in big demand. This demand curve is not going to stop. I believe it's absolutely going to accelerate. And there's going to be an opportunity for us to begin again. I will see all of you at the end of Q1. It'll be interesting to see what the results look like. I want to thank you all for your continued dedication to your hard work and your professionalism. everybody at Related ISG, you're doing an outstanding job, as well as all the other fellow realtors in South Florida, meeting the big demand and the popularity that South Florida is currently enjoying. I wish you and your families a very safe 2021. I'll see you at the end of Q1. Bye-bye now.